The program saying, quote, a young person does not need parental consent to obtain a LARC or any other contraceptive method. If the young person is not choosing abstinence, she would be able to select a LARC and have it inserted without parental consent.
And you see this, 11-year-olds, okay?
Kennedy, this goes beyond condom distribution. You're talking about young kids. You're not just talking about one school, you're talking about 13 schools now. As a parent, does this drive you crazy?
Yes, I have a 10-year-old now. She turned 10 last week, and my God, she is a year away from being eligible in Seattle schools. Where my husband's from Seattle. We lived there for many years, and we almost stayed there, but instead we moved south and then east. Woo! And here we are. I am so freaked out by this because I worry where schools are going. And you point that out. You can't bring agave to school, but you can get a long-term hormonal implant. And, you know, I have a long history of cancer in my family. My 10-year-old daughter probably doesn't have a very complex understanding of the types of breast cancer alone that we've experienced on both sides, on all sides of our family. And I don't want her body interacting with that stuff. And that actually has nothing to do with contraception. Guess what? Condoms aren't going to give you long-term health issues, as some of these things just might.
Right. It also doesn't protect against sexually transmitted diseases. You're dealing with middle school kids now that they're assuming have knowledge that a college kid would have about STDs, about family history. You're assuming that a 6th grader would have had these kinds of conversations with their parents to know the whole history and know what the implications are for hormonal contraceptives or any kind of hormonal, you know, inserted item into their body. So what do you say to that, this kind of overreach in schools? Do you think this will catch on?
I hope not, but I do think it is a move for more control by schools, whether it's through sex ed, in this, I think, one of the most aggressive forms we've seen, or their food. It seems like the schools are obsessed with doing everything but teaching, and then you look at reading, writing, and arithmetic scores of our students with other countries. We wonder why we're down lower, because there is this belief, and you know this because you've worked in academia, Jedediah. It's run by progressives who believe that they know better, and this is not the business of the school. If I were a parent, I would be furious, and I see tons of lawsuits on the horizon.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that the school is not there to educate your child. You gotta really think about that. It's there to just indoctrinate them into the system, okay? To make them a part of the system and have them believe the way that they want them to believe. That's why they want your children so early, okay?
I don't think this is going to stick because this is the kind of thing, just having worked in administration, parents are going to report this to schools. There's going to be enormous pushback. This is not a policy that's going to be widespread. But what's your reaction as a parent? I mean, just seeing this, I don't have kids, and I am disgusted beyond belief that you could think of having a child go to school and having that school think that they can act like a parent. What do you feel when you read about a story like this?
My reaction is they're working on the wrong end.
Yeah.
It's got to be on the head. Work on the brain, as Andrea said.
Yeah.
I mean, want more for themselves than having sex at the wrong time in their lives and having something happen that they then have to, you know, raise a child for the rest of their lives. Every child's a blessing, but you would want your 11-year-old perhaps to have a different journey. Let me work on that as a parent. No, by the way, I do object to you trying to have a different type of relationship with my child than the one that I anticipated you were going to have that had to do with books. And so I understand that there would be some conversation between the school system and the parent, but this power grab, yeah, I'm not comfortable with that at all. You're working on the wrong end. Stick with the head, let me work on the rest.
Also shows we need more school children.
When you just said a child, having a child, this is a child we're talking about, an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
So let me work on that, because that's my value system. I need to work on that with my
What about people who say, Rob, though, that schools have to do this because not everybody has a mom and dad at home? Sometimes schools have to play mom and dad. Not my opinion, but some advocate.
Well, I would say that still none of the school's business. It's the parent's business to be the parent, and offering to do this on an 11-year-old is just it's ridiculous, you know. I think they get a little far to the left up there in the People's Republic of Seattle. I was just there last week.
Do you think that they're going to get much pushback from this? Do you think people are going to, you know, fight against this and make a big push against it? Or do you think they're going to?
No.
A lot of people probably don't know.
A lot of people don't know?
Yeah.
Right.
Or enough people, the right people,
Right.
you know, aren't aware of this.
And some people are just so dumbed down that they're not paying attention. You know, and like I said, remember we said that people are being dumbed down through the education system, but not only that, through chemicals. Okay, remember, because we talked about fluoride. Fluoride is a main ingredient of rat poison. Fluoride, a study was done on fluoride by Harvard University, found out that it lowers people's IQ. But yet it's in your toothpaste and it's in your drinking water. Okay. So, go ahead.
This didn't just start. I was teaching adolescents in the 70s, and I had a male student who wanted to talk to me after class. And he was telling me that he had started the sex change operation. He didn't have to tell me, we could see he wore a little bra. And he had breasts, and this was done via the medical association. So I started talking to him about his childhood. How far can you go back your memory? What's your earliest memory? And he informed me that his earliest memory was hearing his grandmother burn to death. She was preparing a Thanksgiving dinner. His parents had gone shopping, he found out later, and he could hear her scream. He was in the crib, in his baby crib, and he couldn't do anything about it, but he could hear his grandmother scream, and he could not help her. So he feels that that's when he began to lose his manhood of what male, and he was he said that he was quite happy with his life because he was dating men who had money, men who were professional sports people, professional football players, and he felt, you know, that he had this money, but still there was something in his mind that was holding him back, and he wanted me to help him, and I really didn't know.
Did he have a father in his life?
He had both parents, and I asked him had he talked to his parents, to both parents, and he said that they didn't understand him at all. They didn't want to have anything to do with him. But I could not tell him what to do with his body.
Right.
Yeah, but the doctors had already started this. A lot of what we see now, not just this, but a lot of the things that we see now that are distasteful started some time ago. It's just coming to
It's coming more to light because they're making it more acceptable now. So through the television programming, and making it more acceptable.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that because there's another thing they're pushing too. I noticed that. You know, when a young girl gets a certain age, she better leave home, but they keep the boys home. Boys end up being the mama boy, but the girl.
Well, I've heard interesting theories on it. Like a guy was saying that he thinks it was because of slavery, and how they would, you know, attack the boys. So the women felt guarded of their sons. So, you know, a lot of times they kind of developed an overprotection for the males because, you know, they were being done so wrongly by the slave master. You know, that's one theory of why people think, you know, that happens with, you know, African American. You know. But now this was IUD, all right. But now let's look at this next one, because more and more you're losing your rights as a parent. Now this is school facilitated an abortion for 15-year-olds without parent knowledge.
Well, earlier this hour we brought you new details on the Seattle teenager, 15-year-old, whose school helped her get an abortion. The school's clinic's medical waiver shutting parents out of some of the most sensitive medical decisions a young person could ever have to make. Now, the incident has prompted outrage and concern from parents across the country. John Carlson is a radio host with KBI Radio in Seattle. He's my guest now. John, so this girl got an abortion at this clinic. The school didn't run the clinic, but the school gave her a taxi ride, essentially, let her go get it during the school hours and agreed not to tell the parents that she was doing it. So it was essentially facilitating. And yet the school, and most independent observers say the school legally did nothing wrong. Is that right?
Well, that is the problem, the law. Megan, the law in Washington allows something like this to happen because they don't have a parental consent or a parental notification law protecting parents here in Washington state. That's why this happened. So the lesson for Washington and every other state in the union is if you don't have a parental notification law on the books, this is the kind of thing that can happen. I do want to point out that the school went even beyond what you were pointing out. Not only did they facilitate the abortion, they also encouraged the girl not to tell her parents. The girl was told that if she didn't tell her parents, the abortion would be paid for, and her attendance record did not reflect the fact that she was off campus for half the day.
So it almost sounds like a cover-up.
Well, it sounds like they were doing what they could to make sure that there would be no evidence that the girl had an abortion that day.
John, I looked at the consent form that this mother reportedly signed, and it does say in here that youth, meaning the child, may independently access reproductive health care at any age, and it goes on to provide consent for emergency transportation to other doctors or clinics, including for those reproductive services. So, I mean, couldn't this mother have said, I'm not signing that?
Well, why is the language so vague would be the question that school officials haven't answered. Why not reproductive health services up to and including abortion?
Well, reproductive services is short-term in most circles. I mean, you know that includes things like birth control and many,
right.
I mean, in this whole healthcare debate, that was short form for, and it may include abortion, reproductive services.
You see, I don't think a lot of parents
don't really understand what's going on here, don't like the shifting of gender roles, and of course for people who just find it offends their homophobic sensibilities and they feel that's largely catering to the homosexual community, which they're uncomfortable with. However, the company has said that they have made this product with no specific sexual orientation in mind. That being said, though, the ads are still largely heteronormative. Mr. Krause, one of the founders, is himself a user of his own product, and he said that he created it partially for himself because he felt guilt that he was interested in and wanted to wear clothing like this. And he's hoping that this kind of product will kind of alleviate some of the taboo around men dressing in quote-unquote girls' clothes. And he wants people to be able to wear whatever they want, whenever they want, without judgment. So, welcome to the feminist movement that's been going on for decades. Hi. As the erosion of gender roles continue, it's going to be...
And I like the way she put that as the erosion of gender roles. Okay, so they're trying to. It's even now where they're having the bathroom signs now, with half man, half woman on it. So
yeah.
Right. So genderless bathrooms. Okay.
They started in Florida.
Right, but they
started in Florida.
Yeah, and they did it. They did it at a school too.
Yes.
So the kids can use whatever bathroom they want to use.
That's
okay?
in Florida too.
Not good.
That a few weeks ago.
All right, but now let's look at this because this is something that you may not have heard of. This is the gay bomb. Y'all ever heard of the gay bomb? No. All right, listen to this.
The Pentagon confirmed to CBS 5 today military leaders once proposed building a so-called gay bomb, a chemical weapon that could be dropped on enemy troops to make them sexually irresistible to each other. Here's CBS 5 political editor Hank Blank.
Well, Alan, it was an Air Force lab that proposed this to the Pentagon officials, and it was a Berkeley-based watchdog group that found out about this strange idea for a weapon. Edward Hammond of Berkeley's Sunshine Project tracks military spending. He used the Freedom of Information Act to obtain this proposal from the Air Force's Wright Laboratory to build what's been called a gay bomb. The weapons proposal says one distasteful but completely non-lethal example would be strong aphrodisiacs, especially if the chemical also caused homosexual behavior.
The Ohio Air Force Lab proposed that a bomb be developed that contained a chemical that would cause enemy soldiers to become gay and to have their units break down because all the soldiers became irresistibly attracted to one another.
The Air Force Lab asked for $7.5 million to develop such a bomb.
The notion was that chemicals that would probably normally be present in the human body in low quantities could be identified and...
Now, how we know they're not spraying something in the air now?
Exactly.
Okay?
We don't.
With the mentality of these people. How do we know?
Virtue of either breathing or having their skin exposed to this chemical. The notion was that soldiers would become gay.
The Pentagon confirms that such a proposal was made, but rejected as part of the military search for non-lethal weapons. A spokesperson told us the Department of Defense is committed to identifying, researching, and developing non-lethal weapons that will support our men and women in uniform. But proposing a gay bomb is offensive to people like Hayward's Hong Win, who was dismissed from the Army under Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
The proposal saying that the gay bomb would encourage this distasteful behavior, homophobic behavior, is just offensive on its face, period.
And gay community leaders find the idea almost laughable.
Throughout history, we have had so many brave men and women who are gay and lesbian serving the military with distinction. So it's just offensive that they think that by turning people gay, that would somehow make the other militaries incapable of doing their job. And it's absurd because there's so much scientific and medical data that shows that sexual orientation is immutable and can't be changed.
The Pentagon says the proposal was made by the Air Force in 1994 and dismissed, but that is not what the Berkeley Watchdog Group found.
So when the Pentagon says it didn't really go anywhere, it was dismissed out of hand,
that's not correct. The truth of the matter is that it would never have come to my attention if it had been dismissed at the time that it was proposed. In fact, the Pentagon has used it repeatedly subsequently in efforts to promote non-lethal weapons, and in fact they submitted it to the highest scientific review body in the country for them to consider.
This gay bomb.
That's correct.
For the record, the military says it is not working on a gay bomb right now.
Right now.
Yeah, right. Right.
Who came out with that? Clinton? Obama. Come on, don't ask.
Oh, don't ask. That was before. That was before Obama.
I thought before Clinton, I believe.
Yeah, it probably was Clinton.
Oh, Bush didn't go for it.
Yeah.
Bush didn't go for it. Reagan didn't went for it.
Yeah. Well, see, you got to remember that the political system, that's a sham.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the illusion that you have choice. Democrats and Republicans, all that. They're working together.
That's right.
They're working to fulfill the same agenda. So if you think that you have a choice, you're sadly mistaken. Okay? It's the same. They act like, it's like watching wrestling. They act like they hate each other.
Right.
They're all they're all the same, two sides of the same coin. Okay? Now, when we talked about the water, in the water, they studied the water. Matter of fact, this was the Philadelphia drinking water. Okay, they found 64 prescription drugs in the water. Okay, when they treated the water, it was still 54 prescription drugs that they found. They found acetaminophen, they found hormones, they found all kinds of things in drugs in the water. They said when some fish had come in contact with the water, it actually changed their gender. It changed from male to female. Okay, but now it's funny because Brother Nassim, he sent me something that he wanted you to check out. All right, I'm gonna put that on real quick. But listen to this.
Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We've been with you for 18 years as we turn to another story.
Yes, now we turn to the story of a University of California scientist who discovered that a popular herbicide may have harmful effects on the endocrine system. Tyrone Hayes was first hired in 1997 by a company that later became agribusiness giant Syngenta. They asked him to study their product, atrazine, a pesticide that is applied to more than half the corn crops in the United States and widely used on golf courses and Christmas tree farms. But after Hayes found results that the manufacturer did not expect, that atrazine causes sexual abnormalities in frogs and could cause the same problems for humans, Syngenta refused to allow him to publish his work. This was the start of an epic feud between the scientist and the corporation.
Now a new article in the New Yorker magazine uses court documents from a class action lawsuit against Syngenta to show how it sought to prevent the Environmental Protection Agency from banning the profitable chemical, which is already banned by the European Union. To start with, the company's public relations team drafted a list of 4 goals. Reporter Rachel Aviv writes, quote, the first was, quote, discredit Hayes. In a spiral-bound notebook, Syngenta's communications manager, Sherry Ford, who referred to Hayes by his initials, wrote that the company could prevent citing of TH data by revealing him as non-credible. He was a frequent topic of conversation at company meetings. Syngenta looked for ways to exploit Hayes' faults, problems. If TH involved in scandal, Enviros will drop him, Ford wrote. Well, for more, we're joined by TH himself. That's right, Tyrone Hayes is with us, professor of integrative biology at the University of California, Berkeley, joining us from the campus TV station right now in Berkeley. Welcome to Democracy Now! Can you tell us what happened to you, how you were originally tied to Syngenta, the research you did, and what prevented you from originally publishing it?
Well, here at Berkeley, I was a new assistant professor. I was already studying the effects of hormones and the effects of chemicals that interfere with hormones on amphibian development, and I was approached by the manufacturer and asked to study the effects of atrazine, the herbicide, on frogs. And after I discovered that it interfered with male development and caused males to turn into females to develop eggs, the company tried to prevent me from publishing and from discussing that work with other scientists outside of their panel.
What was the process within the company as you raised your findings? What was their immediate reaction to what you had come across?
Well, initially they seemed sort of supportive. We designed more studies, we designed more analysis, and they encouraged me to do more analysis. But as the further analysis just supported the original finding, they became less interested in moving forward very quickly, and eventually they moved to asking me to manipulate data or to misrepresent data, and ultimately they told me I could not publish or could not talk about the data outside of their closed panel.
And Professor Hayes, talk about exactly what you found. What were the abnormalities you found in frogs, the gender-bending nature of this drug, atrazine?
Well, initially we found that the larynx or the voice box in exposed males didn't grow properly. And this was an indication that the male hormone testosterone was not being produced at appropriate levels. And eventually we found that not only were these males demasculized or chemically castrated, but they also were starting to develop ovaries or starting to develop eggs. And eventually we discovered that these males didn't breed properly, that some of the males actually completely turned into females. So we had genetic males that were laying eggs and reproducing as females. And now we're starting to show that some of these males actually show, I guess, what we call homosexual behavior. They actually prefer to mate with other males.
And so where did you go with your research?
Well, eventually what happened was the EPA insisted that, the Environmental Protection Agency insisted that the manufacturer release me from the confidentiality contract. And we published our findings in pretty high-ranking journals such as Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. We published some work in Nature. We published work in Environmental Health Perspectives, which is a journal sponsored by the National Institutes of Health.
And so, I mean, look how sad that is. Okay? That you could be being exposed to something that actually changed the gender of frogs.
That's right.
Okay?
I read some years ago a story about an ancient Indian, ancient East Indian doctor, researcher, who was invited to this country. And prior to that, I had read some stories about Native Americans calling trees tree people. And I said, oh, it just stayed in my mind. I love trees, and it just stayed in my consciousness. So some years ago, when I read about this East Indian doctor coming here to talk about trees, he was stopped by the American scientists when he said that trees have a heart and that they have a circulatory system, which means that something similar to blood circulates through the tree. And they stopped him. They said, oh no, you do this. American scientists stopped him. And this was many, many years ago. No, you do this and we do that. And he was very upset about that. Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of interesting pieces to show you on the Native Americans and what they said. Okay.
Yeah.
Their belief systems.
And the East Indians, because when America enslaved us, they brought us here. When they went to India, they stayed on Indian soil, and the Indians, the people in India were able to hide their information. I understand a lot of our information is still hidden in Africa too. But they were able to hide it. So the Europeans never found it.
Right.
So they could go back and get that ancient information and go from there.
Well, a lot of our information, I think, was found too. It's hiding somewhere, probably in the Vatican.
Yeah, a lot of it's hidden under the Vatican. Right.
But now, how many people are familiar with the Georgia Guidestones?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
What?
The Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah,
All right.
I just don't know where it came from. Who
Right.
put it there?
All right, so this is a little history on the Georgia Guidestones, and you can see how these people are thinking and what they're trying to establish. On one of the highest hilltops in Elbert County, Georgia, stands a huge granite monument engraved in 8 different languages. On the 4 giant stones that support the common capstone are 10 guides or commandments that a monument is alternately referred to as the Georgia Guidestones. It's called the Georgia Guidestones or the American Stonehenge. Though relatively unknown to most people, it is an important cult hierarchy that dominates the world in which we live. And as I was telling you last time, these people